Lisbon right here on the left. And I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the major places where we stopped. And it's at the top, too. So first we stayed in Lisbon for about 4 days. We were kind of by ourselves, but among 25,000 other people who attended. We were spread out all over the city. And then after that was over, we hopped on the Howard tour bus. And from then on, please. Okay, from then on, we were with 19 people, plus different translators that were added at different points. And it was a great group. They were all Rotarians. This Howard tour, we have Brad Howard, the main guy, he was with us. And they do only Rotary trips. So he is really gung-ho. He's a big honcho in California in his Rotary Club. So this is his business, and he loves it. So we went from Lisbon to Óbidos, I don't know if that's written on there, Fatima, Batalha. These are all World Heritage locations. Pete?
Fatima, isn't there a famous shrine there in Fatima?
You'll hear all about it. Okay. Batalha, Porto. What's famous about Porto? Porto. Okay. Santiago de Compostela. You read about the train crash from Madrid heading toward this Santiago, and that was a big festival. We were there for celebrations too. So Lugo, so as you see on the map, Lugo moves a little bit to the right. Oviedo, continuing, and Leon, Ponferrada, Fuente de, which is, we were about 2,000 feet above sea level in the Pyrenees. Bilbao, big city. I didn't know much about it. A vast city. And what is it that you find there now?
Guggenheim.
The Guggenheim Museum, the third one they build around the world. They're building a fourth one. San Sebastian, way up on the north side of Spain. And then Tarnos, that's where my husband's relative came, picked us up, took us to France to spend the day with her family. Pamplona, Tarragona, which is over on the Mediterranean Sea, and then Barcelona.
In Lisbon, we spent 4 days. We actually landed in Paris, transferred to Lisbon. In Paris is the only place we had to show our passport, which was a great change for me from the 80s when you had to show your passport everywhere you went. And this is the beautiful convention site in downtown Lisbon. It was just an excellent facility. You can see the little Rotary signs on the flags there. And it was very hot and very sunny. And Lisbon is on the coast, but it's actually on the river that goes into the sea. Plenary sessions for Rotary were conducted inside this beautiful, beautiful hall or auditorium, and it was very professional presentations. We had a lot of professional presenters, singers, dancers, people from all over the world. We were very excited about that. They had a huge display area for all of the different Rotary projects, and so I took this one picture mainly for my son, because I thought he was into all things cars and all that. But this, I believe, Janet, I believe it's an eye clinic that the Rotarians sponsored for use in another country. It's very hard sometimes to locate the people who know what the information is about, but you see such wonderful displays as these types of Rotary vehicles. Also, they had breakout sessions, and the breakout sessions were actually hard to get into unless you arrived almost a half hour ahead of time, which kind of surprised me because we didn't have that type of problem when Pearl Rose and I went to Chicago for Rotary International in Chicago many years ago. So I was lucky because I wanted to hear the presentation on Rotary in Russia. And I think a lot of you know that in April I went on a pilgrimage to Poland, Lithuania, Slovakia, Austria, ended up in Italy, because my parents, both sides, grandparents came from Eastern Europe, Poland, and from Yugoslavia. And I was interested in the growth of Rotary in Russia after the Second World War. And it was done through a club-to-club type of format. Actually started with the Swedish clubs, reached out to form clubs in St. Petersburg, actually it was Leningrad at the time, in Moscow. And so there were members of the Swedish clubs that were present at this session. And then there were members of the French clubs reached out to sponsor clubs in both Moscow and Leningrad. And again, this is all after 1990, after the fall of the communist regime. And so there were the French there. There were also, believe it or not, Germans who sponsored clubs in Russia. Now, if you think about what happened during the Second World War, I mean, I was almost in tears when I heard about that, especially after my visit to Poland. And so it was great. Rotary is serving as a great international mediator and peacekeeper between those countries following the Second World War. And so I listened intently, and everyone spoke English. I was so ashamed because my Russian was so bad. Even though I majored in college, even the French would apologize for his Russian and for his French and for his English, which we all chuckled about because Frenchmen don't apologize for much of anything. But right, Roger? But it was just a wonderful tale about how club to club they started Rotary clubs in Russia. And the Rotarians and Russians, I mean, are definitely into parties heavy time. And in fact, their party sold out ahead of time. So, next time you go to a Rotary convention, you definitely want to sign up for the Russian parties because they really go all night long and they're very happy people. And yes, the Rotarians here, it's a really good event. Okay. So I wanted to throw that in about Russia.
Okay, we didn't go to a bullfight, but this is a bullfight ring. It was very close to our hotel. And look at the flag that's up there. Do you see that? Yeah, so they must have gotten some Rotary International grant funds because they were promoting polio. You could get it more easily if you had a polio part of it. And down below, there was a shop. Of course, everywhere you go, there's a shop. And there was a food court, so we ate there quite often.
A shopping mall was down
shopping
below.
Mall,
yeah. And our taxi driver who took us from the airport into Lisbon to our hotel, we went by this bullfighting facility, and he says, he said, we don't kill the bulls anymore. And I said, no, you just torture them. And he goes, yeah. So,
and in Barcelona, they have banned bullfighting. They don't allow it anymore. So there are a lot of animal rights people that are changing the law.
Oh, okay. We did a city tour. You can sign up for all these tours when you go to the Rotary conventions, right there at the Rotary convention site. So we signed up for the city tour. We ended up going to this high area, which was known as was formerly a castle. There was hardly anything of a castle left there, but we were on top of the castle walls. These are the cannons, looking out over the city of Lisbon. Now, the city of Lisbon was entirely rebuilt after the 1851 earthquake and fire. So you're looking at, they rebuilt it the way it was, but you're looking at a very beautiful vista out the river that flows out to the ocean on that one.
This is the Bellum Tower.
Janet, microphone.
It was the Bellum Tower, thank you. It served several purposes. One, to make sure that any enemy coming in would be captured, but also for people checking in to visit Portugal. And there was a lot of fishing industry and sailors going back and forth the country. So this was also to welcome them and help them.
Also in Lisbon, we visited the monastery of St. Jerome, not Geronimo, but St. Jerome. The interesting thing about this monastery is that it is owned by the government of Portugal because I think you remember during the era of the Spanish-American Wars, the government came in and took over a lot of the Catholic monasteries and actually evicted the monks and the nuns and everybody, and they took over these facilities. So now the Portuguese government has to take care of these facilities. So this is the beautiful monastery, and inside you just walk around the beautiful the doors of the different. I was trying to remember what the doors led to. Were they the different cells of the monks?
Was it what then? Oh, yes, cells for the monks.
Right. So they, again, going back to the 10th and 11th century.
Yeah, that's Vasco da Gama in his tomb. His name was everywhere because he's the one. He's sort of like George Washington of Portugal. Once he discovered the route to India and some of the other countries, Portugal became one of the richest countries in the world, probably. So.
And our Portuguese guide told us that at the height of the Portuguese exploration of the world, they had like 20,000 explorers out over, India, China, South America, Caribbean. So it was a grand scale of exploration that they did when they discovered the world back then, and they claimed they did discover the world.
So because of his fame, he has a mall named after him.
The Vasco da Gama Mall.
And that's a great mall. It has upstairs, it has the buses, the trains. It's a central station for getting anywhere.
Yes, Lisbon has had many international events and in their cities, so they're very well organized with their trains and buses and everything of that nature. Okay, also at the Lisbon Convention, there was the District 5020 reception, and you can see me standing there with Governor Judy Byron and our incoming governor, who's now our governor, Pete Taylor. And that's a glass of port that she's holding. Hope you enjoy it. This is a group shot of our Howard tour group. And as you can see, we're all very happy and smiling because it's warm and sunny, and we're out there along the river. And we just had a great time. Our tour leader, Brad, is kneeling at the bottom there. He actually was a younger man. His father, he took over his father's business, tour business. And so he was a lot of fun, and we really enjoyed it.
Okay, and there's Brad Howard, our tour leader, and Elizabeth, who took us through Portugal. She not only could translate really quickly, and she had a lot of energy, but she knew a lot of history. So we'd be standing there or sitting in the bus and hear 15 minutes of history just about one part of Portugal. So she knew it all. She was really good. But anyway, right there, we were just laughing because they didn't agree on which way to go to find something. And here's Óbidos, which is the whole town is a World Heritage Site. And the story goes that the king at the time, when he got married, his wife-to-be loved that town so much, he gave it to her as a gift. And that became the tradition after that. Kings always gave a town or city to the woman that they married. So, and that's Óbidos. And pardon me?
The dowry, yes.
The dowry. And you can see the blue tile up there. The next picture will show it in more detail. And Rosanne, you knew the story of tile.
Yes, Elizabeth gave us a long history on the development of tile in Portugal, and the end result is that they still put a lot of tile over their buildings because it really does protect the underlying parts of the building from the weather, because the tiles are fire hardened and things like that. They're also very beautiful. The scenes that you see there are very lovely on the tiles.
And it's charming. They have that tile all over Portugal on the outside of buildings, blue, yellow. It's just gorgeous.
Okay, from Óbidos, again the same day, we did a lot of sightseeing in one day. We went to the town of Fatima, where the Blessed Virgin appeared in 1916 to the 3 peasant children. And here, much to my amazement, it's a huge square. The town is like almost nothing there, except you get to this huge plaza, and you can see on the left is the actual apparition site, which has an outdoor area for masses. And then at the far end is the original basilica, where the tombs of the 3 children, of course Lucy just died recently, and she was in her 90s as a sister, inside that beautiful basilica. Here's an inside shot of the basilica, and the interesting part is that Janice and I saw so many churches in the inside of churches. After a while, you just go, oh yeah, there's another beautiful church. The art and the architecture were just fantastic. At the other end of the plaza is a new basilica. It's very modern, and it also has a very controversial, very modern cross. And on the cross is so designed by the architect that as you go as you walk around it, it appears that the figure on the cross actually changes. And so it's a very modern statement of the Christian belief in the faith. So that was a wonderful place to visit. Okay. This is the Tala Monastery. Is that right, Jan?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And this again was another monastery that the Portuguese government kicked the monks out of and took it over, and now they have to support it and take care of it. And it's a huge monastery. Did you have any comments about that?
Well, turn to the next one, the Rotary sign.
Oh yeah, and as Jen and I were walking along, trying to find some shade because it was very bright and sunny, we discovered a Rotary.
Right there, as we entered that monastery church area. And then it's written in Portuguese, so I looked it up, and all I could find was it said something like remediate and environment and the world, bring the world together. So I couldn't put it in a real reasonable sentence, but it's just it doesn't say what they did when they put that there, but they made some improvement in the yard or something, but it was something positive that Rotary has done.
Rotary is everywhere.
How old is that?
Well, the date's down at the bottom, so it looks like it's February 23rd, 1991. So it's been there a while. Yeah, 1991, yeah.
But the monastery was there much longer before that, and it actually had quite a bit of history. We learned all about the history of the monastery and the king and how he came there and left there and things like that.
Okay, where are we now? Porto.
Famous for white and red port. There's actually 3 types of port wines that we talked about. The white, the ruby, and the red. Is that correct? This is one of the barrels that they make the wine in, and this was Kalem wine, which was the port winery that we were visiting at the time.
How was the wine?
Port? Oh. There we go. That was the port.
We had wine every night. It was a ritual.
True Rotarians.
This is the wine tasting room of the port winery where we were.
Which one does taste?
I actually like the white. It's a little lighter than the red. But you have to remember that it's really fortified wine, and the history of that goes back to when they used to bring it from England down to Portugal. They wanted to stop the fermentation process in the barrel. They weren't sure how to do it. And eventually they hit upon the idea, we'll just inject some alcohol into it. And that stops the fermentation process, but it also ups the alcohol content of port.
Was that your first glass? Or?
They gave us 2 glasses to drink, yeah. And then they took our picture. So.
Okay, that's the train station in Porto, and I just loved all that tile. And the translator said, if you think you're buying Italian tile, you're not always buying Italian tile because there could be some Portuguese tile in there too, but they don't mention Portugal. So. Okay, that's Fado. And anybody heard of Fado before? Okay. So apparently it's something like our country western music, the dog died, my husband fled off. But that's traditional. And she was a lovely singer, and there are some guitar players there. But the next one shows and it involves dancing, and we weren't just there to watch. I was sitting in my comfortable chair, and all of a sudden they broke up, and this really nice-looking young man came over and asked me to dance. So I jumped up, and he asked me again too. So that was fun.
Yeah, that dances very, very well. The Fado singers they're sort of operatic, but they aren't necessarily, the popular ones don't necessarily have the best voices. The popular ones are the ones that can sing with great emotion. And so we saw that and experienced it, and it was really, really something else. It was wonderful.
What kind of a dance did they call it?
Fado. It's called Fado. Fado dancing. It's sort of like this Portuguese version of the polka, line dancing, things of that nature.
Twirling.
This is a picture Janet took of the little souvenir shops that were everywhere. And you could buy all sorts of nice items and trinkets as well. Okay, that was the end of Portugal. Now we enter into Spain. Santiago de Compostela, the cathedral. the end of the El Camino, The Way. For those of you that saw Martin Sheen's movie, The Way, it's a wonderful movie. It does accurately depict a lot of things that we saw. It is a World Heritage Site. This is the inside of the cathedral, and they were having a mass at that time. And if you could see at the bottom, they were getting ready to hoist up to the ceiling the huge incensor. Now, in our churches now we have these little incensors, but this is like a 4-foot-high incenser, and then they hoist it up to the ceiling and it begins swinging like a pendulum through the nave, and the incense is floating through the air. The actual history on that is that because the church was the end of the pilgrimage for these pilgrims, and the pilgrims ended up sleeping in the cathedral at night. The men could sleep on the bottom floor, the women on the top floor. You can imagine what it smelled like. So the incense helped clear the air. We saw, as our bus traveled the 2-lane highways, no freeways, we saw pilgrims. These are the young and old people that were on their way to Santiago de Compostela as part of a pilgrimage. So this is a young man that we saw. Again, this is back inside of Santiago de Compostela, the cathedral, and another picture of just the height of those cathedrals. The high ceilings were just amazing to us. And Janet and I were off behind the choir there when we snuggled in.
Do you know what this means?
Yes.
Dave, these are the symbols.
They're everywhere along that trail.
And that's how you know, that's how the pilgrims know which way to go. They follow either the footprint symbol, which is, I guess goes back to Roman times, the footprint, or the seashell, which becomes the symbol of having completed the El Camino, your pilgrimage as well. Templar's Castle at Ponferrada. Okay, it was just, I mean, classic medieval castle that was closed. We could not get into it, but we definitely walked all around it. And the Templars were the bankers of the era, and as a result, the French king owed them too much money, so he went to the Pope and accused them all sorts of terrible things. And the Templars got disbanded because the king had got all his debts wiped out. That's good.
Okay, here is where we went up the 2,000 feet to the Pyrenees. It's a very windy road, and when we got there, we thought, well, we hope we don't have to come back on that same road, but the next morning we had to come back. So that's a national park, and we loved it. We were looking out our window at that one with the cows, and I don't know if there are any sheep there, but they knew when it was time to eat. You could hear their bells, and they were making a trek to the right. And that's called a parador, and that's government-owned too, the hotel. And typically they will take an old historical building and make it into a parador, but this one looks like it was built fairly recently. There's also a cable car that will take you up to the top of a peak, but we didn't have time to do that.
The mountain peaks were right behind our hotel room, and we just looked out at those mountain peaks. It was wonderful. Okay, on our way next to the city of Bilbao and the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. The exterior, besides being undulating and very different, is made out of 35,000 titanium tiles, if you can imagine that. So we actually had a wonderful tour of that museum and got to go inside of it and had a lot of it explained to us. The key to success in all these tours are the tour guides. You just learn so much from them, and I was always taking notes afterwards of everything you learned. This is a very, very wonderful and must-see museum. Outside of the museum is Poopy. It's puppy, we say, but in Spanish, U is spelled U, so it's Poopy. This is a sculpture, a garden sculpture, a plant sculpture, and for 4 times a year they completely replant it with different plants, and that stands right out in front of the Guggenheim Museum.
And Bilbao is where we were introduced to the Basque people, not introduced literally, but they talked about because the Basque city was in poor economic shape for some time, and the Basque people there really rose to the occasion and made it a very Steel City, I think, or something like that. But they brought the economy back in that city.
Once the steel mills closed down, reminded me of Cleveland where I grew up.
Okay.
Then they were able to transition into a wonderful place to come visit and to other types of industry other than steel.
And then everything was written in the two languages, Spanish and the Basque language. And so far, nobody's been able to figure out the root of the Basque language. They can't find any other language that seems to have the same root, that it developed from. Nobody's figured it out.
Did they show when those buildings were built?
Well, this one's a recent one, the Guggenheim. This one's really recent.
I think it was, the last decade, I think it was built in the last decade.
And
it's very modern, very modern.
They're building a fourth Guggenheim. It's one of the Middle East countries. Is it Dubai, or I don't know if it's Dubai or something like, in the city, I don't know, but they're building a fourth one right now.
Okay, on from Bilbao to...
Okay, this is when my husband's second cousin came to San Sebastian to pick up Rosanne and me. So up there on the left, I'm waiting for her to come. And who am I reading the book from? Alfred Hitchcock. Now, the people are still mesmerized with our movie industry, and every single room in this hotel featured a director, an actor, actress, or something. So I liked Alfred Hitchcock. And you can find statues of Elvis, James Dean in different places.
Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, so that's their home. It's over 100 years old, so they call it a maison. This is their 17-year-old daughter. She doesn't want to inherit the car from her brother because he's going to Paris to study. She wants her motor scooter. And then he's sort of politically active, so he offered to show us his room so he could show us his flags and everything, and then having lunch together.
Lunch was 5 courses,
yeah,
or more she made, and it was just wonderful. I thought it was just the first course, and then they kept cooking and bringing out more food to us on the patio. And actually, I think their maison is actually closer to 200 years old.
Was it 200? Yeah, I'm thinking 100 isn't old enough, but 200, that makes sense.
It's in a little town called
Tarnos,
which is near Belize. And we actually got a tour. They took us through Belize, so we got to see the beautiful beaches and hotels on our way back to San Sebastian, and over 100 miles an hour.
And all along the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, Pamplona.
Now here are the rules. We're in Pamplona. Here are the rules. And it was one day before the run started.
Running of the bulls.
So here are the rules. Wear white clothes. Don't touch the bulls. Don't call out to the bulls. Never run drunk. Never run when drugged. Wear suitable footwear. Don't stop during the route. And if you fall, do not get up until the entire herd has run by. And a lot of them fall, but it's not the bulls that injure the people, it's the other people tromping on them as they keep going.
And this is a picture of actually the street, which is more like an alley, basically, that we toured the day before the running of the bulls.
And it's uphill. It's supposed to take 2 minutes, so if there's a big problem, it takes longer, but 2 minutes.
It's uphill to the bullfighting ring. And then the bulls go into the bullfighting ring and have the bullfights. They can still kill them and have them. Okay, Janet.
Yeah, there's Rosanne, and we stopped by in Pamplona to see the Cafe Iruña. Have you heard of that? That's where Hemingway spent his days writing The Sun Also Rises. And if you've read The Paris Wife, they mention it too. So they had to have a statue of Hemingway inside, and it's nothing really different. It's like a bar, but it's right there in the square, a huge square. So
very beautiful. Okay, next as we approached Barcelona, we went to the small city of Tarragona, and outside of that, we saw this original Roman aqueduct overhead, and actually some of the group went up and climbed up the hillside and climbed up on it. I did not do that. Janet, did you do that? No, you didn't do that either. Okay. And the interesting part about this is that once the Roman Empire fell and the Vandals and the Goths and everybody else took over, and then went into the medieval ages, the local townspeople their historical memory of what the aqueduct was for. They even forgot about it. It's kind of outside of the town. They even lost track of it. And when they discovered it, they thought they didn't know what it was, but they decided that the aliens had landed and had created this Roman aqueduct. But indeed, it was just a Roman aqueduct, bringing water in from the mountains on top of it into the city. So, I mean, so you can imagine how sophisticated the Roman engineers and architects were. This was the Roman amphitheater in Tarragona. I actually did not go down because there was so many steps down into it. I think, Janet, you did, didn't you?
I didn't go down.
Oh, okay. But it was just beautiful, and in the background is the Mediterranean Sea. So it was just a beautiful vista, lovely location.
Yeah, the best part of that city is the history of it, because during the medieval ages, the people built their churches on top of the Roman ruins. You know, nobody cared about them. They were gone, thank goodness, and let's just put our new stuff up here. But this is one city that archaeologists discovered have a lot of ruins that were still left, because you don't typically find that type of feature that's left over from those days. So they passed a law that said if there's a Roman ruin, a wall, anything, you can't touch it, you can't change it. And so when the developers started building apartments for more people in the center of the city, and they had to build around the walls, and they told the people who bought them, you don't mess with those walls. So they have to use them in their design or something and just keep them there, walk around them.
We actually went into a little shop just to look at the floor, and I could think, why are we going into the shop to look at the floor? Well, the floor was a glass floor, and you could see down into the rooms that they were excavating below the shop itself, and this, again, was just fabulous. Okay, we made it to Barcelona at the end of our trip, and of course for Barcelona, the most notable feature is the Church of Sagrada Familia, which means Holy Family Church. The very famous architect of the last century, Gaudi, was the one who designed and built most of it before it was torn down during the Spanish Civil War. And so you can see the outside of it, and you can see the cranes behind it, because now they're going full bore. They're finishing the building of the entire cathedral. It's actually going to become the cathedral. There's an old cathedral in Barcelona. This is going to become the new cathedral when it's done. It looks like something out of, The Hobbit or something, because there's so much statuary on the outside. You can see the different life-size statues on the outside in the corner there. And then above that is a picture of the door. And Gaudi was a genius mathematician, and so everything in this cathedral is built according to mathematical equations. And he put in the middle of the door, and you can see that there's a little plaque with a series of numbers on it, and the numbers have a great deal of significance. If they're read a certain way, they pertain to Jesus Christ, the Savior.
It's sort of like a Sudoku.
Right in the middle of one of the grand doors of the cathedral. So that's the outside of the cathedral, and here's the architect. We actually found him, and this is one of our Rotarians sitting and visiting with him. He was actually quite a normal gentleman who lived in Barcelona, and his unfortunately he became quite deaf later in life while he was still working on the cathedral, and he was actually run over by a streetcar and killed. The reason he died was because nobody wanted to help him. They just left him laying there in the street. So he's buried downstairs in the cathedral itself. So that's one of our Rotarian friends visiting with Gaudi's statue. And
That's it.
that's it.
And next year, if you want to attend, it's in Sydney, Australia. And I read a lot or a little bit in the Rotarian that came in the mail recently, and they're already really organized. They've got a great conference location. So
And a lot of interesting side tours that you can take as well. And I think Jan and I were trying to figure out where we met these two Roman soldiers and had our picture taken with them. And I think it's not Tarragona, but it was just before we got there, so we thought we'd end with that picture.
the beginning and the end.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Yes, Dan.
Is 25,000 a typical number, and how many hotels, I guess, would hold them?
I think that's a smaller number. I think a lot more were in Chicago. They can get up to 40,000. I'm not sure if Sydney might be larger than 25,000. We had all the hotels not only around the convention site, but also, you saw the picture of the old part of Lisbon. We stayed in the new part of Lisbon. And so, yeah.
There were shuttle buses. They were free. And we'd have to get there at the right time, every half hour or something. So that's how we got back and forth. But they do have a good metro system, too. Take you there.
Yeah. Were you conscious of always moving with great crowds of people
For the
during the convention?
during the convention, they just had huge buildings, so there wasn't any problem with crowding, except getting into a few of those workshops that Rosanne was talking about. But no, people did what we did. We went out on a tour of Lisbon one day, and so we weren't just sitting. I did get the DVD or CD, I haven't listened to it yet, of all the speeches. The ones that we went to were really good. So I thought maybe for some event we might want to watch one of them or so.
No, there were not crowds and crowds of people like when I was in Italy at the Vatican Square and things like that. This was not like that.
Any other questions?
Anyway, it was a great way for Janet to start her retirement, and I saw her really
And
relax
yours.
and have a good time, and a real good way for me to bust my travel budget. So.